The Las Vegas Raiders find themselves at a crossroads once again, navigating a crucial and critical decision-making process that could shape the franchise's future. Star wide receiver Davante Adams and defensive end Max Crosby, the leaders of the team, have thrown their support behind interim coach Antonio Pierce, advocating for him to take the helm as the team's next head coach. Just listen to what Davante Adams had to say about him.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously who I wanted. That's my vote. And I've been vocal about that, and that's basically how the whole locker room feels, and with good reason. I mean, he's come in and done a great job, and he's continued to win us over. It's not just the comfortable thing. I think having AP here will be be good for this organization. He kind of embodies what it means to be a Raider, and that mentality, that swag, and all the things that he endorses is the things that I believe in. So it's easy for a guy like me, especially having dealt with him a little bit this year now and gotten to know him and see his evolution, in front of the team, all those things, all the different fields of being a head coach. So definitely rooting for him.
Now, Davante Adams and Max Crosby vocal backing of Pierce has resonated strongly within the Raiders locker room, signaling a unified front and just a resounding vote of confidence for the interim coach. However, despite internal endorsement from the Raiders locker room, the rumors have been swirling about the potential return of Jim Harbaugh to the NFL, possibly with the Las Vegas Raiders, which definitely adds another layer of complexity to the team's coaching decision for Mark Davis. The speculation surrounding Harbaugh's potential move to Vegas has stirred excitement among fans and NFL media pundits. Harbaugh recently hired the same agent as Tom Brady, who was in the process of being a minority owner for the Raiders, and it is reported that Harbaugh and his wife would be very interested in the lifestyle of living in Las Vegas. Also, Mark Davis was interested in hiring Harbaugh back in 2015 and 2022. Now, we don't really know how close he came to becoming the next coach for the Raiders, but definitely it seems like the stars are starting to align for potential return to the NFL for Harbaugh. Now, John Harbaugh's successful coaching tenure both in the NFL with the 49ers, getting them to 3 straight conference championships, and now with the University of Michigan being in the national championship with a legitimate shot to becoming the champion, has positioned him as a very high profile candidate for various different coaching vacancies like the Raiders and also potentially like the LA Chargers. He's definitely a hot commodity for teams that are looking for a head coach this offseason. However, despite the noise and the buzz, it's definitely essential to revisit the Raiders' past coaching decisions by Mark Davis, and especially the choice he made a couple years ago in 2022. Reports back then emerged indicating that Davis, essentially disregarded the team's inclination and support to retain then interim head coach Rich Bisaccia in favor of pursuing what he thought was the higher profile candidate and the guy with the better resume and head coach Josh McDaniels, and we all know how that ended up turning out. It definitely set back this franchise. It was the wrong decision to make, and his move was viewed by many as just a deviation from the team's internal consensus, and this decision could definitely serve as a pivotal factor in the decision-making process for Davis in this offseason. The apparent disconnect between the team's desired choice of Bisaccia and Davis's preference for McDaniels in 22 definitely sheds light on the potential tension within the organization's decision-making hierarchy. Now, this whole situation might influence Davis's approach this year, specifically in evaluating the wishes of the locker room and aligning them with the front office vision. Adams and Crosby's public endorsements of Pierce not only just highlight the interim coach's rapport with the players, but also show the importance of unity within a team, within a locker room, a factor that cannot be overlooked when evaluating the course of the Raiders' future. Now, Davante Adams is a player who wants to feel valued in the decision-making process within this team. So if Mark Davis ignores his wish and Crosby's wish once again, and he does not retain Antonio Pierce, could this potentially lead to Davante Adams feeling even more unsettled within this franchise? And could this be the final straw? You know, it's a difficult question to ask. This is definitely a tricky situation overall. Now, I will mention that Jim Harbaugh is definitely a much stronger coaching candidate than Josh McDaniels was at the time 2 years ago. So I definitely think if he had to choose between AP and Harbaugh in this offseason, that is a more difficult decision. But you still got to figure that Mark Davis at some point will think to himself that he doesn't want to commit the same mistake he made 2 years ago with ignoring the locker room and giving an interim coach a chance. There's no doubt in my mind that Jim Harbaugh comes with a much better resume, a winning track record, he's got more experience, and he's just a much bigger splash move than what Antonio Pierce is. In a market like Las Vegas, I can understand why Mark Davis tends to lean towards the big splashy moves, because Vegas is a city of entertainment, but at the same time, I feel like Mark Davis has been chasing these splash moves ever since the move to Las Vegas was announced, first with John Gruden and now with Josh McDaniels, and it never really worked for him. So something to keep into consideration, and there's no doubt that Harbaugh brings a certain level of expertise that Coach AP currently does not have, but what the Raiders also have to watch out for is giving Harbaugh complete power and having the final say on all decisions within the franchise. If the news is true, if he is returning to the NFL, then look, I don't think that he's completely set on just coming to the Raiders. I think he's going to explore all his options. He's going to look at the Chargers. He's going to look at the Washington Commanders. He's going to evaluate which job would be the best for his future. And at that point, maybe Mark Davis could run the risk of giving this guy a huge multi-year deal like he did with John Gruden. And at that point, you know, I just don't want us to make the same mistake that we did with John Gruden. I think the last thing we need is another de facto GM like Gruden who had control over all final say on the roster, who had control on personnel, draft decisions. I don't really want that. I want the head coach to coach the team, and I want a real GM that will be in charge of assembling a roster. Also, I just feel like the NFL, the league is increasingly becoming more of a players league where teams are starting to gravitate towards former players within their age range that can relate to them and who are player coaches like Antonio Pierce is. I also look at the success that the Houston Texans have had with DeMeco Ryans. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is a former player as well, but he's a lot older than Antonio Pierce, so I just wonder how well he would relate to the players, and ultimately if he would bring a similar mindset to what John Gruden and McDaniels had, and that's the it's my way or the highway approach. I feel like if he does that, it's not going to really work here in the NFL. It's one thing to do it in college, but in the NFL, it's a lot more difficult. I think the league is trending toward coaches that are open to feedback and adapting their overall game plans to the strengths and weaknesses of their current team. So definitely an interesting topic. I mean, I think a lot's going to ride on what happens this weekend, both with the Raiders and with the Michigan Wolverines. Antonio Pierce is still fighting for his job, so I would not be surprised if the Raiders went out there and won this game, even though I will say it's a meaningless football game. But, you know, at the same time, I can't blame Antonio Pierce. He wants to get the head coaching job. I think by winning against Denver, it helps his chances slightly, especially if the locker room can come out there, if the team can come out there and just dominate. That's something to take into consideration. Also, with Jim Harbaugh, I mean, if the Michigan Wolverines win, then that might just be the final nail in the coffin for him to say, you know what, I've reached the top at college football. I want a new challenge, and that's to win a championship at the next level. At the same time, if he loses, then maybe that seals his fate, and at that point he would decide to return to Michigan because he wants to win that national championship. Look, a lot's going to ride on what happens this weekend. We're still not even 100% sure if Harbaugh will return to the NFL or if he will continue to stay at Michigan. But as the coaching carousel spins once again for the Raiders, the balance between just honoring the players' preferences, the vision of the organization, and the potential allure of a high-profile candidate like Harbaugh presents a very difficult decision for Mark Davis. The lessons of past coaching decisions, ultimately, the John Harbaugh rumors add an enticing dimension to the Raiders' coaching decision. The internal dynamics and past decisions are poised to weigh heavily within Mark Davis as the team navigates through a critical phase of selecting its next head coach. It's going to be the biggest decision he makes all year in this offseason. Davis will need to consider the player support for Antonio Pierce, just the overall vision of this franchise, and the allure of a prominent head coaching candidate like Harbaugh, but there's no doubt that the stage is set for a very intriguing and a pivotal offseason for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2024, and it's going to start with who Davis chooses to be the next coach moving forward. But Raider Nation, I definitely want to get your guys' feedback. Do you think Mark Davis should value more the locker room aspect of guys like Davante Adams and Max Crosby supporting Antonio Pierce? Or do you think John Harbaugh is that good of a candidate that if he's available, Mark Davis cannot pass him up? Let me know in the comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that is all for you guys in today's video. Anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.